Because right now, something you think is helping is quietly pushing her away. You feel it when the tone changes. Replies get shorter, eye contact drops, affection stalls, and you can't point to what you did wrong. This is for the person who keeps showing up, keeps being available, keeps being kind, and keeps getting confused when that kindness seems to flip into distance or disgust. The emotion underneath this moment is confusion. Not anger, not heartbreak, confusion. Here's the misread. You think kindness is being evaluated as kindness. It isn't. What's being evaluated is what your kindness signals. And that difference matters today, not later, because this keeps repeating. You help her move. You listen longer than anyone else. You reply fast. You cancel plans for her. You make things easy. And then something in her shuts down. Not because she's cruel, not because she hates kindness, but because excessive availability gets translated into something else. Not love, not safety, scarcity, or more accurately, the absence of it. That translation happens fast, before logic, before explanation, before words. It's a body-level reaction. The first uncomfortable truth is this. Attraction doesn't start by asking, is he good? It starts by asking, is he chosen? That question runs quietly in the background. By everyone, all the time. When you're always available, always agreeable, always ready, the signal isn't devotion. The signal is surplus, and surplus gets treated differently than value. Think about the ordinary moments where this shows up. You wait for her schedule to open. You say yes without checking yours. You smooth over tension immediately. You apologize fast even when nothing was taken. Each of these feels respectful. Each of these feels mature. Each of these feels like the right move. But stacked together, they erase friction. And friction is how value gets felt. Here's the cost. When there's no friction, there's no sense of choice. And without choice, desire doesn't get oxygen. This isn't about being mean. It's about being located. If everything in your life bends around her, there's nothing solid for her to lean against. There's nothing to push on, nothing to test. So the nervous system fills in the blank. If he's this available, what else does he have? Not consciously, reflexively. That reflex isn't polite. It doesn't care about intention. It only reads patterns. This is where people argue. They say that's shallow. They say that's immature. They say that's not how adults should work. And they're arguing with how things should be, not with how attraction actually forms. Observation comes before judgment. Watch what happens, not what people claim they want. The moment she senses that you'd still be there no matter how she shows up, something subtle changes. Respect doesn't vanish. Desire thins. And here's where the word nobody likes shows up. Disgust. Not dramatic disgust, not verbal disgust. A mild physical recoil, a tightening, a loss of warmth. That reaction isn't about you as a person. It's about what your behavior suggests about your options. Options signal demand. Demand signals value. Value creates tension. Tension sustains attraction. Remove the first step and the chain collapses. This is why doing more often does less. You think you're proving interest. What you're proving is that your life is adjustable. Look at the everyday signs. You're always the one initiating. You're always the one checking in. You're always the one fixing the mood. You're always the one adapting. And adaptation feels generous. But permanent adaptation reads as self-erasure. The cost here isn't just attraction. It's dignity. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that comes from having edges. When you remove your edges to be liked, you also remove the surface that creates pull. Here's a grounding moment. You've seen this outside of dating. You don't respect the coworker who never pushes back. You don't value the friend who's fine with anything. You don't trust the opinion of someone who agrees with everyone. That's not cruelty. That's pattern recognition. Attraction uses the same system. Another angle. Kindness without selectivity feels unsafe, not comforting. Unsafe. Because if everyone gets the same access, there's no signal of discernment, no evidence of judgment, no indication that boundaries exist. Boundaries are not walls, they're filters, and filters communicate standards. Without standards, kindness feels hollow, like it's leaking, like it has no cost to you. And anything that costs you nothing feels worth little. This is where the internal erosion starts. You notice yourself shrinking. You wait. You hope. You overthink texts. You replay conversations. You don't feel chosen. You feel tolerated. And instead of pulling back, you often double down. more kindness, more availability, more explanation. That move feels logical. It's also the fastest way to deepen the problem, because now the signal isn't just surplus, it's dependence. Dependence doesn't create desire, it creates pressure, and pressure triggers avoidance. Here's the part people miss. The ick isn't a judgment, it's a warning signal. It says, something here doesn't balance. Not morally, energetically. One person is overinvested, one person is underinvested. And the gap creates discomfort. She may not know why she feels it, she just knows she does. So she pulls away, she gets colder, she rationalizes, she says she's busy, she says she's confused, and you're left staring at your own good behavior, trying to understand how it became a liability. Another concrete moment, you change your opinion to match hers, you downplay your preferences, you avoid disagreement to keep peace. Peace feels good short term. But long term, it removes polarity. Polarity isn't conflict, it's contrast. Contrast is what keeps attention awake. When everything blends, interest fades. This isn't about being difficult, it's about being distinct. The system that shapes this didn't come from nowhere. Modern dating incentives reward availability. They reward responsiveness. They reward emotional labor. Media reinforces the idea that showing up more equals caring more, and caring more should equal attraction. But attraction doesn't work on merit points. It works on perceived value under choice. That's the system anchor, not villains, incentives. Here's another cost. When you're endlessly kind without selectivity, you teach others how to treat you, not through words, through patterns. If access is unlimited, it's used casually. If attention is guaranteed, it's not protected. If effort is constant, it's no longer noticed. This isn't punishment, it's gravity. Midway reminder, none of this requires cruelty. None of this requires games. None of this requires becoming cold. It requires becoming located, having a life that doesn't rearrange itself on request, having preferences that survive disagreement, having standards that cost you something. Now, the uncomfortable mirror. Think about your younger self. Think about what you respected. Think about who you leaned toward. It wasn't the person who was always there. It was the person who had something going on. Something that could be missed. Something that required timing. Scarcity doesn't mean rare. It means not guaranteed. When your presence is guaranteed, it loses edge. Another division point. Some people hear this and feel relieved. Some feel attacked. The difference is whether they've been rewarded for overgiving before. If kindness worked for you in the past, this sounds wrong. If it didn't, this explains too much. Here's a subtle but critical distinction. Kindness is attractive when it's chosen, not when it's automatic. When you offer kindness selectively, it feels intentional. When you offer it universally, it feels reflexive. Reflexes don't inspire desire. They inspire predictability. Predictability kills curiosity, and curiosity is what keeps someone leaning forward. Notice the cycle. She pulls back. You lean in. She feels crowded. You feel rejected. She feels pressure. You feel confused. No one is evil here. But the pattern feeds itself. Breaking it doesn't mean withdrawing affection. It means restoring proportion, matching investment, letting space exist, allowing absence to do its job. Absence isn't punishment, it's information. It shows whether interest can travel on its own. Another grounding breath. This doesn't mean you stop being kind. It means kindness stops being your only move. You don't lead with accommodation, you lead with presence. Presence includes limits. Presence includes not tonight. Presence includes disagreement without apology. Those moments feel risky. They are. Risk is part of attraction. Safety alone doesn't create desire. It creates comfort. Comfort without tension becomes neutrality. Neutrality feels like nothing, and nothing gets ignored. Here's the long-term identity cost. If you build connection by erasing yourself, you won't recognize who you're becoming. You'll feel useful, not wanted, appreciated, not desired, relied on, not chosen. That's a quiet kind of loss, the kind that doesn't explode, it just drains. So the real question isn't why kindness triggers disgust. It's why kindness was carrying a message it was never meant to carry. The message wasn't care, it was availability without cost. Change the message, not the heart. Let your kindness come from abundance, not from reaching. Let it appear after selection, not before. Let it sit on top of a life that doesn't collapse without approval. The unresolved part stays unresolved. Because this isn't about tactics, it's about calibration. How much access someone has to you, how easily you move, how often you adjust. Those answers shape how you're felt, not just how you're seen. If this landed uncomfortably, it was meant to. Not to shame, to locate. People who stay through this recognize themselves in the pattern. They're not trying to be liked. They're trying to understand why effort didn't equal outcome. That recognition is the signal, not a request, not an instruction. The next layer goes deeper into how to rebuild attraction without losing decency, and why most advice fails at that exact point. This ends here, but it doesn't end the question.